Hi folks, welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. Today I want to talk about how to survive a financial collapse. I know that there's a lot of stuff going on today in the news regarding Canada, regarding Ukraine and Russia, and we're not going to get to that in this video. I'll be making a video later on this afternoon that'll cover some of that kind of stuff. Today I want to talk about financial collapse because my opinion is, and it may not be the correct one, so I get that, but my opinion is that's probably the most likely catastrophic event that you and I will probably have to face in our lifetime. It is a complete economic collapse, especially here in the United States, but really more of just the overall Western world. And so it's important for us to do what we can because it's major. Like, you know, economic collapse, we're talking that's on the levels of, nuclear war, EMP, grid failure. I mean, it's on that level. It's very catastrophic, and it will have immediate and long-lasting problems that we'll have to deal with. So it's really important for us to prepare for that. So I want to talk about that today. Before I get started, I want to mention something that, well, it fits with this video quite well. One of the most important things that you can have in your preps for any event, anything, economic collapse, grid down, no matter what, it's something that you need to have, and that's good water filtration. And I've teamed up for quite a while now with a company that is known as the industry standard. They are the Cadillac line of water filtration, and that's Berkey water filters. There's a link down in the description below that can take you there. And if you can't get one, I understand, but it's an important part of your preps. And if you're planning on getting one, I would advise getting one soon, because they've announced that they're going to have to increase their prices of things real soon because their cost to do business has gone up. The price of the steel and other components that they use to manufacture their filters and their whole systems have gone up, and they're like everything else. They're going to have to go up on their prices. So I would encourage you to get one as soon as you can if that's something that you need, because good water filtration is very important. But this whole getting ready for financial collapse, there's no way I could sit here and lay out all the hows it could happen and all the whys it could happen and all the different ways and stuff. It could happen, and there's a lot of different variables that would play into that. I think the number one thing, and if I could make a video just giving you one tip to sum it all up, and that is just being as self-sufficient as possible. That's really going to be the biggest key in surviving some type of economic collapse, whether it's just the dollar losing its value or just overall complete collapse of our economy. Being as self-sufficient as possible, and most of the tips and the things that I'll talk about kind of revolve around that. And that's a pretty broad statement, I get it, and it's going to look different for everybody. I'm not just saying necessarily to go out into the woods and build you a cabin off grid and live like you're the little house on the prairie. I mean, if you're capable of doing that and willing to do that, that's certainly going to be a great way to prepare and to survive against a financial collapse. But being self-sufficient can look very differently. You need to be able to be as sever the ties as much as possible on the various systems that keep our country and our society going. And you may not be able to sever them all and sever them completely, but every step that you make towards being less dependent upon that system is going to make you, more likely to survive. So the medical healthcare systems, the utility systems, the food supply systems, the infrastructure and the systems surrounding, just being safe and secure, police and the justice system, things like that. If you can do everything you can that's within your power and your scope to end or lessen the dependency on those things, then when a collapse happens, you're going to be in a much better place of kind of riding it out on your own. And so the less dependent you are, the more secure you are when it comes to surviving. I mean, to me, that's just a general rule of thumb. And so basically what I tell people, because like I said, it's different with everyone. You know, you pull up, you know, these top 10 ways to survive, top 10 things to prep, and they may be some good ideas, but they may not always apply to you. So everyone has to do it differently. You just have to sit down and evaluate your entire life. And what is it that you do on a regular basis? What is it, you know, do you have medicines that you have to take? The utilities that come into your house, where do they come from? And are there alternatives that you can use that's more in your hands? Meaning, number one, you are capable of producing your own electricity or just doing without it, reducing the usage that you would need. Solar power, wind power, things like that. And you know, the food supply system. Are you capable of producing your own food? Are you capable of preserving that food? These are some really big things that you need to be thinking about in your life. Are you able to secure your property and your home, your family? You know, if a financial collapse happens, different aspects of government could collapse, or they could at least become less available. So if bad guys come to your place and they're wanting to do harm to you or take your things, you may not be able to just dial 911 and expect a few minutes later someone to show up to protect you. You need to be able to protect yourself. So ending the dependency on these systems around us, on all this infrastructure and these systems and everything that we've put in place to make our lives as Westerners more comfortable and more secure and more lavish and more easy. Ending your dependency on all those things is really the key to surviving an economic collapse and really surviving anything. As far as finances and from a financial perspective, some of the things that you can do is number one, and this is something that we're doing. We are not wealthy people. I was someone the other day was joking that you know, you should not have any money in the bank, you know, not have a lot of cash in the bank. And like, yeah, I went to the bank right away and I withdrew my $10.62 out of the bank. I get that. We try to only keep enough money in the bank for the bills that we know we have to pay. We're like anyone. We pay some bills electronically, and some of them we actually still write checks for some of our bills. So I try to keep just enough money to cover that, and if all possible, keep everything out of the bank. Because it's not gonna, I don't think it'll be the same thing as like back in the bank runs during the Great Depression, where people actually physically went to the bank and physically withdrew physical currency. I mean, we would see some of that, but I think most of it, what a bank run would be basically people trying to access their money electronically and the bank's shutting it down, or there'd be some kind of surprise cyber attack that would shut down your ability to access your money. Kind of what's going on right now as I speak in Ukraine. That was some of the news today, is that they're experiencing some very heavy cyber attacks on their banking and military systems. I wonder who's doing that. And the people aren't even able to access their money. They're not able to use ATMs, debit cards aren't working, that kind of stuff. That's a very likely scenario for us. So you need to not keep, I would think, not keep that much money in the bank locked up. For most of you, that's not too big of a deal, but there's going to be some of you that, you know, you're a little bit more wealthy than others. Nothing wrong with that. It's America. It's great. But you're like, well, I can't take out my savings of $150,000, $200,000, $500,000 or whatever and put that under my bed. No, of course not. You wouldn't want to do that. Some other ways that you can do that, you can put that money into other areas that's going to be more secure than just the banking system. Cryptocurrencies is one of them. Hard precious metal assets like gold and silver. And then there's also offshore banking accounts, foreign currencies that would be more stable than American currencies. This is something you would certainly want to talk to a financial advisor over, especially if you've got that level of money to move around. But for most of us that, you know, probably kind of live paycheck to paycheck, it's a little bit different. Now, when you take your money out, A lot of you might be saying, well, if the dollar's crashing, why would I want all this paper, pretty printed toilet paper that's not going to be worth anything? And you're correct in that. So I kind of look at it in different stages. If something happens, most likely there's going to be a very narrow window where currency is going to be okay. Meaning that if we start hearing, we wake up one morning and we hear in the news that the dollar's collapsing and stuff like that. If I ran to one of the local gas stations or convenience stores or something around here out in the country, one of these little markets or something in town, pretty quickly, my money would probably still be accepted there, because it takes a little while for things to trickle down with companies, businesses. The heads say, okay, we're not taking money anymore, it's collapsing. So there'd be a little narrow window where my money is still good if you move fast enough. And so this is kind of like our plan here. Not completely, I'm just kind of letting you in on a little bit. So if something like that was to happen, where it was very obvious that it was happening now, collapse, dollar market, everything's collapsing, we would probably run to a local store and take some of the currency that we have on hand and use it to buy things that we know would be good right then and there. Some extra food, maybe some extra medicines, things like that, first aid stuff, whatever, fuel, things like that, top off. It's not that we don't have that stuff, but we know that money that we have, that currency, the value of it's only short-lived. It probably may not be there in a few days, so we're going to go and we're going to buy what we can with it. But we're not going to keep all of our wealth in that money, in that currency. We're going to keep the majority of it in actual tangible assets. Part of that's going to be in precious metals, gold and silver, but even that only is going to have a short-lived value. A lot of people are going to argue with me on that, and let me explain. In a complete total collapse, especially something that's going to last very long term, and that's the key, and we don't really know, but something that's going to last very long term, at some point, even that gold and silver isn't going to be that valuable, at least not in the things that you might need it for. At first, as soon as that currency starts to look like it's losing value, people are going to switch over, I believe, in a fairly natural sense, to gold and silver, at least those that have it. The few little shops and people that might still have things for sale, you could walk in and say, they're going to say, well, that dollar item is now $20 in US currency, but hey, I've got a silver quarter ounce or a quarter ounce of silver or something like that, and hey, that's good for me also. That's going to happen for a while, but eventually that's going to stop, because at some point, as things start to worsen, if they started to worsen, and if this was a very long-term, something like what we've seen happen in Venezuela or other countries like that in history, where it was a complete collapse and it got really, really bad to the point that people were starving to death and killing each other over a loaf of bread and stuff. You can't eat gold and silver, and when people are desperate, that gold and silver doesn't really mean anything to them either. It's not much any better than a piece of paper with a dollar printed on it. And so the gold and silver, that's kind of that medium, that mid collapse that you want to use that for. So I would have some money in paper currency for that very immediate, and then I would have some more of your wealth in gold and silver, but not all of it. And then I would have probably the rest in actual things that you need, and things maybe you could barter with, that kind of stuff. Food, beans, rice, bullets, water filtration, first aid supplies, medicines, and then just the things that you need on your homestead to survive, tools. That's some of the things that we invest in here at our homestead. We're not just going out and buying, cases of canned food or bags of rice and beans. We do that, but we also are constantly evaluating and putting on a list of priorities of the different tools that we need to just do things, to maintain this property, especially with this idea that at some point we could be cut off for the most part from the rest of the world. So what are the things that we need to maintain it as a productive piece of property, to maintain the animals, any types of tools or things like that to take care of them and take care of animals, fencing type stuff, just normal construction, building things, extra supplies for that, nuts and bolts and nails, that kind of stuff. Or what about just normal tools and mechanical things, all that kind of stuff is part of it. Because to me, that's the better investment, is putting that. I would rather invest my money in things like that that's going to, in the long term, make me more self-sufficient, and actually could have a return even now, where we're producing our own meat, we're producing our own vegetables, I'm building my own things out here. I'm not have to hire someone to come do it because I have the tools and I've developed the knowledge of how to do it. So I'm saving money already. To me, that's a better investment. And like I said earlier, for those of you that have more wealth, you're going to want to do other things, offshore banking accounts, maybe alternative currencies like cryptocurrencies or other foreign currencies to invest your money. I personally would kind of stay away from any type of retirement account investments that are government based right now. It's just not doing good. The inflation numbers came out the other day. They went up. Well, those were consumer inflation numbers. Well, the producer product inflation numbers came out today, and they've done the same thing. Not that it's a big surprise, but they've gone up. So things aren't looking so well. And I know there's a lot of political factors that are affecting us all over, but I still believe that a financial collapse is probably the most likely big catastrophic thing that we might have to deal with. And so positioning yourself in a more self-sufficient way, making sure you're, like I said, producing your own food, producing the basic necessities that you need for life, clothing, medicines, taking care of your children, teaching your children. You have the resources. If it was a long term, you want to be able to entertain and teach your children. You don't want to raise children that don't know how to read or write. Do you have clothing or the ability to mend your clothing? Taking care of your animals. Do you have the tools and the medicines and the medical supplies and stuff to take care of your animals so that they're helping you out by producing? This is the kind of stuff that's very important and maybe one of the more important things. Preparing for financial collapse is kind of like preparing for a grid down failure. And I think I mentioned this the other day. If you prepare for it well, then you've really set yourself in a place that you're prepared for most anything to happen. And it's because a financial complete collapse of the economy is such a major event. So preparing for that puts you in a really, really good place of preparations for anything. So continue to build community, to build your preps, to build your knowledge. That's very key. Getting the books, learning how to do stuff, getting out and training, testing your skills, developing your skills, not just having it just in book knowledge. This is all important. Preparing yourselves to live outside of the system because the system's just collapsed and there's no system left there. So you have become, in a sense, an island. And so you need to be prepared to live that way as much as possible. And so every step you go that direction takes you away from that dependency on the system, and it's like an insurance policy. It's making you more prepared and more capable of sustaining yourself in a massive catastrophic economic collapse, which, like I've said and like you all have been watching, is becoming more and more likely every day here in the United States. All right, folks, thank you all for watching. I'll catch you in the next video.